Growing up, betrayal wasn't just something I heard about, it lived in my house. My father's constant cheating wasn't whispered about, it screamed at us every single day. His random disappearances, late nights with no explanation, and the scent of cheap perfume clinging to his clothes were a slap in the face to my mother's loyalty. I never understood how she kept standing by him, watching her own dignity crumble, pretending everything was fine. As a kid, I believed love could conquer anything, that it was strong enough to survive any storm. But the cracks in their marriage taught me something much darker. Love is fragile. Trust can shatter in a second. I swore I'd never live like that. Then I met Jody. We were high school sweethearts. I saw everything in her that I thought love was supposed to be: kindness, loyalty, someone who shared my dreams. We built our relationship on what I thought was honesty and respect. When we exchanged vows, I promised myself that our marriage wouldn't be like my parents'. I'd give her the stability my mother never had. But life has a cruel way of humbling you. The night Jody decided to spend it with another man wasn't just another night, it was the beginning of the end for us. She thought I'd just look the other way, that her little thrill wouldn't matter to me. Maybe she was right about how exciting it was for her, but she had no idea how deep the knife would cut. What she saw as some harmless adventure, I saw as the unraveling of everything we built. That morning, I sat at my desk, sipping coffee, thinking about how far we'd come. We met in high school, and though we had brief flings with others during small breakups, we always found our way back. We even gave each other our innocence before prom and got married 9 months after graduation. Far as I knew, I was the only man she'd ever been with. Then my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost let it go, probably another IRS scam, but something told me to answer. "Hello?" I said. A man's voice came through, sharp and cold. "Is this Mr. Taylor?" That threw me off. Yeah, this is me. John Richard Taylor III. But people call me Trey. The man introduced himself as Michael Hamilton, one of Jody's co-workers. "I need to meet with you today. There's something you should know." Immediately, my chest tightened. "Is she okay?" "She was fine this morning." "She's fine," he said flatly. "But I have some information that's important. Can you meet me at noon?" He wouldn't say more on the phone. My gut was twisting, but I agreed. At noon, I met Michael outside a little spot called Spike's. He suggested we walk, said it was better if no one overheard. So we headed towards Central Park. "Your wife's been spending a lot of time with a man named Stan Morrison," he started. "They eat lunch together every day. Today, I overheard them making plans for tomorrow night, dinner at the Hilton, dancing, and then spending the night together." My stomach dropped like a stone. "You're telling me they're sleeping together?" "Yes," Michael confirmed. "Stan's already got the reservations. Your wife's out shopping for something new to wear." I was frozen. How did they think this was going to end? "She believes you love her enough to let her explore," Michael continued. "She doesn't think it'll affect your marriage." I stopped walking, my head spinning. "Why are you telling me this?" His eyes hardened. "I was married for 9 years. My wife cheated. The courts destroyed me. I couldn't stop it then. But I can help someone else avoid what I went through." We talked for a while longer before he left. And there I was, alone with this bomb dropped into my life. If Michael was telling the truth, my marriage was dead. And what scared me most was how easily I could imagine it being true based on a stranger's word. I thought back to my childhood, watching my mother suffer while my father ran wild. He was a drunk, constantly chasing women, never hiding it. When I once asked my mom why she stayed, she simply said, "Because I love him." One time, when I was about 11, my dad even took me to one of his girlfriend's houses. I got bored and walked home. I told my mom where I'd been. She never confronted him, but 2 days later, he whipped me for breaking a plate. Looking back, I know now that it wasn't about the plate, it was because I had exposed him. After everything I watched my mother go through, I couldn't live like that. No way. Call me old-fashioned, call me whatever you want, but I wasn't going to be the guy who looked the other way. Eventually, my mom left my dad, remarried, and found happiness. I wasn't about to go through what she did. Jody and I were living in a house my mom and stepfather owned. That made things even more complicated. Should I confront her? Should I wait? Ignore it? As a salesman, I always believed in being proactive. But this was different. If Michael was right, then maybe I never really knew Jody at all. She knew where I stood on cheating, she knew it would be unforgivable. I decided I needed proof. Cold, hard evidence. So I hired a private investigator. After a quick meeting and a painful amount of money, we had a plan. Now came the hard part, how to act when I got home. When I walked through the door that night, Jody greeted me like she always did. Kissed me, hugged me, smiled like nothing was wrong. I had to decide, play along or confront her. If I acted like I knew, she could deny everything and hide better. But if I stayed calm, maybe she'd keep slipping. So I played my part. We had dinner like normal. I fried pork chops while my stomach churned. Pretending was harder than I expected. She either was the best actress I'd ever seen, or she truly believed I was too clueless to ever find out. Like Michael said, maybe she was just that confident. Around 11 p.m. I went upstairs. She was already asleep. I took a long shower, staring at my reflection, trying to quiet my thoughts. Then I laid there in the dark, wide awake, while she slept beside me. At 6 a.m., the next phase of my plan began. The next morning, she was up early. I heard her moving around, getting dressed, and heading downstairs. A few minutes later, I followed, but by the time I reached the kitchen, she was already gone. That wasn't like her. We always kissed goodbye. Always. But not today. It was Friday, a day that usually brought in decent sales at the RV dealership. But I had no interest in selling motorhomes while my life was falling apart. I called my boss, told him I needed the day off, then reached out to the dealership's attorney, hoping he could recommend a good divorce lawyer. He did, but with a warning. She didn't take cases from cheaters. Don't worry, I told him. That won't be a problem. After he made the call, I met with the lawyer that same morning. She was direct and didn't sugarcoat anything. After I explained what Michael Hamilton had told me, she paused. Why would you hire a private investigator based solely on the word of a stranger, she asked. I told her about my parents, how my father's constant cheating left scars that never fully healed. How I swore I'd never tolerate what my mother endured. She listened carefully, then said, if your wife is really that confident as this Hamilton claims, then she has nothing to lose by going through with her affair. My advice? Wait. Confirm everything. And if it turns out he's lying, you'll walk away with a little embarrassment. But if he's telling the truth, we'll be ready. I nodded. If I'm wrong, I'll eat crow. But if I'm right, I want her served by Monday. She assured me the paperwork would be ready. By early afternoon, I was back at work. I tried selling a large 45-foot motorhome to an elderly couple, the Jacobsons. At first, I doubted whether they could handle such a big rig, but after spending time with them, I realized they were full of life, full of love. They had something I always thought Jody and I would have one day. As they chatted back and forth, laughing and teasing like newlyweds, I found myself envying them. That's what I thought marriage was supposed to be. A partnership. A bond. Not whatever this was becoming with Jody. When they picked out their RV, I gave them a little extra discount from my own commission. They were happy. I smiled as they drove off. Then I glanced at the clock. It was time to head home. I checked in with the investigator. Everything was set for the evening. By 5:30 p.m., I pulled into the garage. Jody's car was there. The house was silent. No dinner on the stove. No music playing. Nothing. I stayed calm. Took the package from the investigator and placed it on the mantel. Then I waited. At 5:45, she came downstairs. She was stunning, wearing the exact outfit Michael described. Overnight bag in hand. My heart was pounding, but I forced a smile. Wow, you look amazing. Big night? She smiled like it was the most normal thing in the world. One of the guys from work has been asking me out. I figured it'd be fun. My stomach flipped. You mean like a date? I asked, trying to sound casual. She nodded, not missing a beat. Yeah. Since you're the only man I've ever been with, I thought it'd be exciting to sleep with someone else. Dinner, dancing, then we're staying overnight at a hotel. I felt the blood drain from my face. You're serious? You're actually spending the night with another man. It's not a big deal, she said, brushing it off like it was nothing. Just one night of fun. I'll be back tomorrow. It won't change anything. Who knows, I might even learn a few new tricks you'll enjoy. I stared at her, struggling to stay calm. I'm not agreeing to this. There's no way I'm letting you go through with this. She scoffed. Don't be ridiculous. I'm dead serious, Jody. If you walk out that door tonight, our marriage is over. At that moment, we both heard a car honk outside. She glanced toward the door. That's him, she said. I stepped in front of her, blocking the path. Please, don't do this. She didn't hesitate. I have to go, she said flatly, stepping around me and kissing me on the cheek like this was any ordinary night. I'll be home by noon tomorrow. Everything will be fine. If you leave, there's nothing to come back to, I warned, my voice heavy. She rolled her eyes. You're being stupid. Enjoy your night thinking about all the fun I'll be having. We'll talk tomorrow. With that, she kissed me again and walked out. I didn't watch her get into the car. I turned toward the fireplace, flipped off the recorder, and grabbed the box of trash bags. For the next 2 hours, I erased her. I cleared her closet, emptied her drawers, pulled her clothes, makeup, jewelry, everything. Even grabbed her birth certificate, diploma, and social security card from the safe. I boxed up the family photo albums, her school awards, and even the Remington bronze statue from her grandfather. I loaded it all into her car, rolled it out of the garage, and parked it on the street. I left the keys on the driver's seat. Afterward, I crawled into bed, but sleep never came. I tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what just happened. Eventually, I got up, made some coffee, and sat through a Hogan's Heroes marathon, hoping to distract myself, but nothing worked. For the next 2 days, I hadn't slept for days. My body was running on fumes, my mind spinning in a fog of anger and heartbreak. By 11 a.m. on the third day, I managed to close the sale with the Jacobsons, finishing up the last of the paperwork. They drove off smiling, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I was home by 11:45. The locksmith had already come and gone, leaving me a new set of keys. The investigator was there too, handing me the video footage he'd gathered over the past 18 hours. At 12:30, I was sitting on the couch, staring at the TV, watching the footage of my wife and her lover. That's when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Jody standing there, looking annoyed. "Hey, my key doesn't work." "And why is my car sitting outside?" she asked, clearly trying to play dumb. I stood in the doorway, blocking her from coming in. "Your key doesn't work because you don't live here anymore. And your car's outside because I don't want it in my garage." She blinked, trying to process what I just said. "What are you talking about?" "This is my house now," she said, her voice rising as she tried to push past me. I stood my ground. "I told you the night you got into that man's car that you wouldn't have a place to come back to. All your stuff's in your car." Her face flushed, the panic starting to show. "You can't be serious." "It was just," she started, but I didn't let her finish. I slammed the door right in her face. She pounded on it, forcing me to open it again. "If you don't stop banging, I'll call the police and have you arrested," I threatened, knowing full well I probably couldn't follow through on it, but not really caring at that point. "You can't do that." "This is my house," she yelled. "This house belongs to my mother and stepfather," I shot back. "And they've decided you don't live here anymore. Now leave." She stood there frozen, speechless. I slammed the door again and went back to the couch, but the rage inside me kept boiling. I glanced out the window and saw her sitting in her car. I walked to the kitchen for water but ended up pouring myself a stiff gin and tonic instead. My frustration was eating me alive. Then the doorbell rang again. Not just once, a relentless, non-stop buzzing that made my skin crawl. I was ready to lose it. I opened the door and there was her sister Judy still pressing the button. "Jody's crying at my house. I want to know what's going on," she said. I didn't care. I slammed the door in her face. But the bell kept ringing. This time, I yanked the door open hard, slamming it against her hand, nearly knocking her off balance. "Ring that bell one more time," I said, my voice low and dangerous, "and I'll break your fingers. One at a time." She pushed back against the door, holding it open. "Talk to me, please." For a moment, I just stood there, breathing hard. Finally, I stepped aside and let her in. She sat down and looked at me. "I thought you loved Jody. I can't believe you kicked her out over a stupid fight." "A stupid fight?" I said, letting out a bitter laugh. "She told you we had a fight over a walk, didn't she?" Judy nodded slowly. "She left out the part where she wanted to go on that walk with a guy from work, didn't she? She didn't tell you they were planning dinner, dancing, and a hotel room after, did she?" I didn't wait for her answer. I pulled out the audio recording I had from the night Jody left and hit play. Judy sat there, listening in silence, her face falling with every word. "I had no idea," she finally whispered. "Yeah," I said flatly. "Neither did I." "So, what are you going to do?" she asked gently. "Divorce her?" "No," I said coldly. "This marriage is over." Judy nodded and stood up. I walked her to the door. She paused before stepping out. "When this is over, can we still be friends?" I sighed. "Jody and I are getting divorced. If she fights it, it'll get ugly. By the time this is all said and done, you probably won't want anything to do with me." She gave a faint smile. "I think I'll miss you." She touched my cheek softly, kissed the other, and walked out. The rest of that evening and all of Sunday, I did nothing but sit in my house eating grilled cheese sandwiches and drinking gin and tonics. The self-pity had fully set in. Then another knock at the door. It was Judy again. "You said if I rang the bell again you'd break my fingers, so I knocked," she said with a half-smile. I motioned for her to come inside. "I've been talking to Jody all day," she started. "What you told me is true. She admits it?" I asked. "She says it was a disaster. They went to the hotel, drank too much, passed out. She woke up, realized what she was doing, and made him take her home." I stared at her, my face blank. "That's a story. You believe her, don't you?" Judy asked. "I believe they spent days, maybe weeks, planning it. They had lunches together, grew close. He knows more about my marriage than I do. Whether they actually slept together or not doesn't matter. The betrayal started long before they got to that hotel room. Judy sat silently. You don't believe her either, do you? I asked. No, she said quietly. Even if nothing happened, she asked, you're still not going to forgive her? Not in this lifetime. We walked to the door. She paused again. When this is all over, can we still be friends? I took a breath. If she fights this divorce, things will get messy. When it's done, you might not want to be friends with me anymore. She smiled faintly. I think I'll miss you. She touched my cheek one last time and left. Since Saturday, I'd kept my phone off for the most part. Jody tried calling over and over but eventually stopped. I managed to get a hold of her father, who tried convincing me it wasn't a big deal since nothing physical happened. I explained it to him just like I did to Judy. He sighed heavily when he realized divorce was inevitable. We hung up. On Monday, I called my attorney and laid everything out the whole weekend. I instructed her to serve Jody with the summons that very day. She assured me it would be done by the end of business. The rest of that day went by in a blur. I don't even remember most of it. Around 4 p.m. My phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was Jody's office number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Good afternoon, Mr. Taylor. This is Michael Hamilton. Thought you might want to hear about today's little excitement. Really? I asked, curious but already expecting bad news. Yes, he said calmly. Your wife was served with the summons. After she read the papers, she fainted. Paramedics took her to the hospital. When they were done, Stan Morrison picked up the paperwork, skimmed through it, and nearly fainted himself. As serious as it all was, I couldn't help but feel a twisted bit of dark amusement. I had no sympathy for either of them. I'll keep you updated on any developments, Michael added. Please do, I said before hanging up. Not a minute later, my phone rang again. It was Judy. Hello. Jody's in the hospital, she said. So? I answered coldly. I just thought you'd want to know. I didn't ask, I shot back, probably a little sharper than I intended. Are you really that heartless? Judy asked, clearly frustrated. My coldness comes from your sister, I replied flatly. I warned you this would get ugly. And this is just round one. The next few weeks unfolded exactly like I expected. Jody tried reaching out dozens of times. I ignored her every attempt. Her parents called too, begging me to hear her out. I refused. My mom spent hours trying to comfort me, but I kept telling her I was fine even though we both knew I wasn't. Michael Hamilton called almost daily with updates. Oddly enough, I found myself looking forward to those calls. He was the only one who truly understood what I was dealing with. He told me that Jody still showed up to work but mostly stayed locked in her office, avoiding everyone except her attorney. Her and Morrison barely spoke now, at least not where anyone could see. Then came the lawyer meeting. It was the first time I'd seen Jody since I kicked her out. She looked thin, worn down. Surprisingly, Judy was there too. As we all sat down, Jody's lawyer looked across the table. Mrs. Taylor categorically denies any infidelity. She's requesting that the divorce petition be dismissed and that both parties pursue counseling to work on the marriage. My lawyer and I exchanged a glance. Then he spoke. If there was no infidelity, can Mrs. Taylor explain her behavior that evening? All eyes turned to Jody. I'd be happy to, she said with forced calm. A gentleman friend picked me up. Does this friend have a name? My lawyer pressed. Yes, but his name isn't important, since nothing inappropriate happened. No reason to involve him. She repeated the same story Judy had told me. Champagne, dinner, more champagne. Too drunk to do anything. Passed out and came home the next day. Poor misunderstanding. I made a mistake, she sighed. But I love my husband and want him to forgive me. I looked over at Judy. She nodded in support of her sister. My lawyer, who'd been silent until now, leaned forward. Okay, let's assume everything you've said is true and that no sex occurred. Was there any touching at all that might not pass the husband test? Absolutely not, Jody insisted. Judy nodded again. My lawyer glanced at me. I returned the glance, picked up the remote, and hit play. A screen lowered from the ceiling. Footage appeared, showing Jody walking to Stan Morrison's car in our driveway. He opened her door and they kissed. Long, passionate. I paused the video. Lie number 1, I said, scanning the room. Jody turned pale. Judy stared at the screen in disbelief. Her lawyer looked down at the paperwork. I continued. After Michael Hamilton's call, my investigator and I planned full surveillance for Friday night. We tracked every move, including their dinner and hotel reservation. I pressed play again. The next scene showed Jody and Morrison at the Hilton restaurant. His hand was resting comfortably on her backside. Lie number 2. Jody squirmed. Judy looked away, clearly struggling. The footage kept rolling. They finished their champagne, headed straight to the elevator, and made their way to the suite. I had paid extra for my investigator to access their room beforehand. Only 4 minutes after walking in, Jody was already entertaining Morrison. Then Jody's voice echoed on the video, a scream, and the screen showed Judy rushing into the room, pulling Jody out. I paused the video again. Seems my client may have forgotten a few details, my lawyer said dryly. Without another word, Jody's lawyer began packing up his briefcase and motioned for the sisters to follow him out of the room. Later that day, back at the dealership, Judy found me at my sales booth. She stood silently before finally asking, "May I sit?" I gestured toward the empty chair. We sat there in silence for a few long moments before she finally spoke. "You knew, didn't you?" "Knew what?" I asked, playing dumb. "When I came to your house that Saturday, you already knew they slept together." I let out a long sigh. "Yes, I had already seen the video before you arrived." Her eyes widened slightly, but she stayed quiet. "They weren't just fooling around, Judy. She's my wife, and she let it happen." Another long pause hung between us before she spoke again, her voice softer now. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was hoping she'd admit it herself," I said quietly. "I thought if she did, she'd agree to the divorce without dragging everyone else into it. I've always liked your parents. I didn't want to drag them through this mess." The silence thickened like fog between us. Then my phone rang, breaking the moment. I answered immediately. "This is Michael Hamilton," came his voice. "Just wanted to give you a heads up. Your wife called yesterday and quit. Walked out without even clearing her desk." "Thanks, Michael. Keep me updated." I hung up as Judy opened her mouth to say something, but before she could speak, the office loudspeaker interrupted. "Trey, you have a call on line 6. I nodded at Judy and stepped away to take it. The call lasted about 15 minutes. When I returned, Judy was still sitting there, eyes distant, lost in thought. When I got back to my desk, Judy was still sitting there. But now she had a different look in her eyes, a kind of finality. "She's gone, Trey." "What do you mean, gone?" I asked, not sure I wanted to hear the answer. "She packed up and left. Probably got her own place by now," Judy said softly. I shook my head. "I don't think so." Judy hesitated, then added, "She asked me to tell your parents she's sorry for disappointing them." "It wasn't just my parents she disappointed," I replied coldly. "Yeah, we know," Judy whispered, almost like she didn't want to say it out loud. She stood, glanced at me one last time, and walked out. That night, I found myself sitting alone, watching the full surveillance video again. My attorney had the master copy, but I kept my own. Watching it didn't even make me angry anymore, just numb. There was no love, no tenderness, just two people using each other. He didn't care about her. She didn't care about me. It was nothing but betrayal, plain and raw. The pain and anger swirled in me. Part of me wanted to scream until my lungs collapsed. Another part wanted revenge, something deeper, something final. But mostly, I just sat there, trapped in my own head. I eventually passed out in the chair, exhausted by my own thoughts. The weeks dragged by. My lawyer kept trying to schedule a follow-up meeting with Jody and her attorney, but nobody could reach her. A month passed. Then another. Nothing. I checked in with Judy and her parents, but none of them had heard from her either. At one point, I even thought about hiring a private investigator to track her down again, but my lawyer advised against it. Instead, I canceled all the credit cards and drained half the joint account. Funny thing was, the remaining balance stayed untouched. "If she stays gone long enough, we can file for desertion," my lawyer said. "We'll see." Then one morning, the phone rang. "Trey Taylor," I answered. "Good morning, Mr. Taylor. Michael Hamilton. Remember me?" "Of course, Michael. How's everything going?" "Not bad," he said. "Just wanted to give you an update. You remember my divorce?" "Yeah. Your ex was living with her new boyfriend." "That's right," Michael said. "Turns out the guy's a thief. He convinced my ex to embezzle from her company. They're both sitting in jail now." I couldn't help but chuckle. Good for them. Still at the dealership? He asked. Yeah. That's actually why I'm calling, he continued. Since your wife left, things have been pretty quiet. But lately, Stan Morrison's been making some interesting calls. Interesting how? He was on the phone with your wife today. I sat up. You're sure? Positive. I overheard him say, I miss you too, Jody. After he hung up, I grabbed his phone and got her number. Nice work, Michael, I said, genuinely impressed. Thanks. I'll keep you posted if I hear anything else. We hung up. I immediately forwarded the number to my attorney and decided to make a call of my own. The phone rang. Judy answered. Hi, Judy. It's Trey. What do you need? She asked, her voice flat. Do you or anyone in your family know anyone living in Florida? Why? Because I think Jody's there. Why do you care? She shot back. I want a divorce. She needs to sign the papers. When are you going to ask her? I don't need to ask. My lawyer's handling it. But it'd save us some time if you just told me where she is. After a long pause, Judy sighed. Fort Lauderdale. Why are you telling me this now? Why didn't you say anything before? Over the next few days, Judy reluctantly gave me Jody's address and confirmed that she knew about the papers. I passed the information to my attorney and he immediately sent them over. Oddly enough, Judy and I still met up for dinner one night after that. We watched the surveillance footage again at my house. She made it clear up front revenge wasn't on the table and she wasn't about to get involved with her sister's ex. Then Thursday morning, my phone rang again. Michael Hamilton. Hey, Mr. Taylor. Just a quick update. Go ahead, I said. Stan Morrison quit today. No notice. Packed up his desk and left. He told a coworker he's moving to Florida. Interesting. Thanks for letting me know. By the way, Michael asked, how's everything going on your end? My wife pled guilty to theft. She'll get a lighter sentence, but her boyfriend's looking at serious time, I said with a chuckle. We chatted for a bit longer, then I hung up and immediately called Judy. How long have you known Stan Morrison was moving to Florida? I asked as soon as she picked up. There was silence on the other end. Judy. How long? A few days, she finally answered. And how many times have they seen each other since she moved down there? 4 times, she admitted quietly. Twice she went there. Twice he visited her. I was speechless. You knew she was still seeing him and you were okay with that? After everything? She's my sister, Trey, Judy said softly. I didn't say another word. I ended the call. Moments later, she called back. I let it ring. I sat in my cubicle for a while, staring at nothing before walking out to the repair shop to talk to one of the mechanics, an old army vet who'd lost a leg and a few fingers overseas. He was one of the few people who really understood the level of betrayal I was going through. I sat down and filled him in. I could make sure they don't make it to Florida, he said casually. No, I replied. Neither of them are worth going to jail for. I just want them out of my life. I can make that happen too, he offered. I laughed. Nah. Living with themselves is punishment enough. We sat for a while longer until the loudspeaker crackled. Trey, call line 4. I stood up and made my way back to my cubicle. I picked up the phone. Trey Taylor. Trey, please don't hang up. I hung up. I walked over to the receptionist and told her no more calls today. I'm going home. As I turned onto my street, I immediately saw Judy's car parked in front of my house. By the time I pulled into the driveway and stepped out, she was already at the front door knocking. She must have remembered my warning about the doorbell. I entered through the garage and made my way to the kitchen. She kept knocking. Finally, I decided to open the door. You're not welcome here, I said, my voice flat. Trey, just listen. I closed the door again, this time without slamming it. I wasn't wasting any more words. I heated up some leftover spaghetti and meatballs, ate in silence, and went to my bedroom. By 10 p.m., I was asleep. The next morning, as I was getting ready for work, there she was again, waiting for me outside, this time hoping I wouldn't make a scene at work. She was wrong. As I walked toward my car, she grabbed my arm. Damn it, Trey, listen to me. I pulled my arm free. You don't have anything I want to hear. You let her crawl back to me while she was still sleeping with that fool. And you didn't tell me. All 3 of you can rot in hell. That was the last time I saw Judy for a while. Though she kept in touch with my mom, she knew to keep her distance from me. By then, word had spread around the dealership. Everybody knew. Every stare, every whispered conversation made the days feel longer. After a while, I just stayed late at the dealership trying to figure out my next move before heading home. Later, my mom called and invited me over for dinner. I agreed. She made Italian. We sat, we ate, but then she steered the conversation somewhere I didn't want it to go. I talked to Judy today. I set my fork down. Mom, if you bring up that family again, I'm leaving. Trey, listen, there's something you don't know, she said, her tone serious. I know everything I need to know. Jody cheated. I'm divorcing her. Good. But what about the baby? She asked, her voice soft. I shot up from my chair, stunned. What? She's pregnant, Trey, my mom explained quietly. You didn't tell me? My voice cracked. She asked us not to, Mom admitted, looking guilty. So you listened to her and ignored your own son? I shot back, my voice filled with hurt and frustration. We thought you might need more time to forgive her. Forgive her? Have you lost your mind? Do you remember what it was like living with a cheater? Or did you block it out completely? Honey, things are different now. People are freer to try new things. I stared at her like she had completely lost her grip on reality. I couldn't take it. I stormed out of her house, my mind spinning. Was I living in some alternate universe? My mom had suffered for years under my father's cheating. And now she was justifying Jody's betrayal like it was some experiment? Like it was nothing? I loved my mom, but her naivety was overwhelming. Like she'd buy a set of encyclopedias from a door-to-door salesman in the age of Google. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove around aimlessly and eventually ended up back at the dealership. I had my keys, so I let myself in, found the employee lounge, and laid down on the old couch. I tossed and turned until nearly 5 a.m. before finally falling asleep. Around 10:30 a.m., my boss found me. He gently woke me up and taped a sign to the door that read, "Do not disturb." When I finally got moving, one of the salesmen told me the boss wanted to see me. My back ached from sleeping on that couch and I desperately needed a shower, but I went. Trey, my boss greeted, looking up from his desk. You need some time off and I can make that happen. He leaned forward. You remember the Jacobsons? The couple you sold the Blue Pros to? Yeah, I said. Well, last week, Mr. Jacobson had a heart attack while they were in Vancouver. He's okay now, but they need someone to drive the motorhome back. They asked for you. Sounds perfect, I said, already feeling some relief. You leave tomorrow. Janie will book your flight. Use the company card for expenses. Got it. I'll get packed. Take 4 days for the trip back, he added. But take 10 total. The Jacobsons aren't in a hurry and we don't need you back too soon. Ben will handle your deals while you're gone. I thanked him and headed out to prepare for the trip. When I landed in Vancouver, I went straight to the hospital. Mr. Jacobson was hooked up to what seemed like every machine in the place. Mrs. Jacobson hovered over him, fussing and adjusting his pillows while he grumbled under his breath. But even through the tubes and the beeping monitors, it was clear they just wanted to be near each other. It made me smile even in the middle of everything. Mrs. Jacobson, it's good to see you, I said. Hi, Trey. How was the flight? I glanced at Mr. Jacobson. I picked up Robert here. Now be quiet, Robert, she teased, smiling sweetly at him. You heard what the doctor said. I get to tell you to be quiet and you can't argue. Doctor's orders. She winked at me. We sat and talked for a while as Robert drifted in and out of sleep. Every time he dozed off, a nurse would come in to check his vitals or adjust the machines. Mrs. Jacobson told me the motorhome was parked nearby and that their grandchildren had been staying with them. The grandson had already flown home, but their granddaughter was packing to ride back with me. When I picked up the phone, I heard her voice right away. Trey, please don't hang up. I hung up before she could finish. I walked over to the receptionist and said, no more calls today. I'm going home. As I turned onto my street, I spotted Judy's car parked in front of my house again. By the time I pulled into the driveway, she was already at my front door knocking. She clearly remembered my warning about the doorbell. I entered through the garage, headed straight to the kitchen. She kept knocking, but I ignored it as long as I could. Eventually, I opened the door. You're not welcome here, I said flatly. Trey, listen, she started. I shut the door in her face. This time, I didn't slam it. I didn't even have the energy. I reheated some spaghetti and meatballs, ate in silence, and by 10 p.m. I was asleep. The next morning, as I was leaving for work, she was waiting for me again. Probably figured I wouldn't cause a scene outside the dealership. She was wrong. As I tried to walk past, she grabbed my arm. Damn it, Trey, listen to me. I yanked my arm away. You don't have anything I want to hear. You knew. You let her crawl back to me while she was still sneaking off with him. All three of you can rot in hell. That was the last time I saw Judy for a while. She kept talking to my mom, but not to me. And honestly, I preferred it that way. By then, everyone at the dealership knew what was going on. The whispers, the side glances, they made every workday feel longer than the last. I stayed late most nights, not because I had anything to do, but because it beat sitting at home thinking about it. A few days later, my mom called and invited me over for dinner. I went, mostly out of habit. She made Italian, but halfway through, the conversation turned. I talked to Judy today. I put my fork down. Mom, if you bring up that family again, I'm leaving. Trey, please, there's something you don't know. I know everything I need to know. Jody cheated. I'm divorcing her. Good. But she hesitated. What about the baby? I froze. What? She's pregnant, Trey, my mom said softly. You didn't tell me? She asked us not to. So you listened to her and ignored me? My voice cracked. We thought you'd need time to forgive her. Forgive her? After everything? Have you forgotten what it was like living with a cheater? Honey, things are different now. People explore more, try new things. That was it. I couldn't listen to another word. I stormed out, my head spinning. My own mother, the woman who lived through years of my father's cheating, was now justifying my wife's betrayal like it was some harmless experiment. I drove aimlessly and ended up back at the dealership. I had my keys, let myself in, and crashed on the employee lounge couch. Tossed and turned until nearly 5 a.m. before finally passing out. At 10:30 a.m., my boss found me, shook me awake, and hung a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the lounge door. Eventually, I got up. One of the guys said my boss wanted to see me. My back ached, my head throbbed, and I needed a shower, but I went anyway. Trey, he said, half smiling. You've been monopolizing the break room. He leaned forward. Remember the Jacobsons? The couple you sold the Blue Pros to? Yeah. Well, Mr. Jacobson had a heart attack in Vancouver last week. He's stable, but they need someone to bring the coach back. They specifically asked for you. Sounds perfect. You leave tomorrow. Janie's already booking the flight. Use the company card for everything. Got it. Take 4 days for the trip, but really take 10. They aren't in a rush and you need the break. Ben will handle your accounts while you're gone. I nodded. This trip couldn't have come at a better time. Once I landed in Vancouver, I went straight to the hospital. Mr. Jacobson was hooked up to all kinds of machines, but Mrs. Jacobson never left his side. Even in that hospital room, you could see the love between them. Mrs. Jacobson, good to see you. Hi, Trey. How was the flight? I looked over at Robert and grinned. I picked him up. Now be quiet, Robert, she teased. You heard the doctor, no arguing. Doctor's orders. We talked for a while. Robert dozed in and out and the nurses kept checking his vitals. Mrs. Jacobson mentioned the motorhome was parked nearby. Their grandchildren had been with them, but now only their granddaughter was left to ride back with me. Just as we finished talking, Robert was discharged. The granddaughter walked in carrying 2 suitcases. She was about my age, attractive, and completely uninterested in making small talk with me. Mrs. Jacobson smiled. Darla's been driving our car the last week. She'll take you to the bus so you can get it ready. Darla didn't look thrilled. Darla, stop it. You'll be fine, Mrs. Jacobson reassured her. She thinks she should stay with us, but it'll be good for her to ride back. Oh, and by the way, she added, your boss said you might need a few extra days. He suggested taking the route through Yellowstone. We promised Darla we'd do that. I'll see what I can do. Before we left, Mrs. Jacobson handed me a letter authorizing me to drive the bus across the border. She kissed me on the cheek. Thanks for helping. Be careful. Darla and I drove to the RV park mostly in silence. She barely acknowledged me. Every attempt at conversation was met with grunts or silence. Once we got to the bus, she grabbed the car keys and headed inside. I asked for the keys back. She tossed them at me without looking, nearly clocking me in the face. What's your problem? I muttered as I picked them up. Fed up, I hooked the car up to the bus, disconnected the hookups, and fired up the engine. By 8 p.m., we crossed the U.S. border. Darla stepped out for the inspection, returned to the bedroom afterward, and disappeared for the rest of the ride. By 7 a.m. the next morning, we were in Burley, Idaho. I had stopped a few times for coffee and sandwiches but was running on fumes. Darla sat silently beside me, then finally broke the silence. I'm hungry. Is there anything to eat? I snapped. I'm not your damn maid. She glared, then stormed back to the bedroom. By 9 a.m. I needed a break. I pulled into a rest area, used the restroom, and when I came back, Darla was stepping off the bus. If you get off, you can't get back on, I warned as I started the engine. Around noon, I pulled into a truck lot, parked between 2 semis, and collapsed on the couch. I passed out almost instantly. When I woke up, the RV was moving. I looked at the clock. I'd been asleep for 5 hours. Darla was at the wheel, driving like a pro. I watched her for a while. Turns out her grandfather had taught her well. I made some coffee and sat in the passenger seat. We drove in silence for about 2 hours. Then I started worrying about fuel. We'd been running nearly 25 hours, covering over 1,500 miles. At 8 miles per gallon, we were close to empty. Hey, we should stop for fuel. She ignored me. We need fuel. Nothing. Finally, she snapped. I took care of it while you were snoring. Surprised, I sat back down on the couch and fell asleep again. I never saw her eat, drink, or even use the bathroom, but somehow she managed everything while I slept. 3 hours later, we pulled into a truck stop in Dumas, Texas. It was past 10 p.m. I made us sandwiches, grabbed more coffee, and took the wheel for the final stretch toward Houston. I drove through the night, only stopping once for a bathroom break. By 8 a.m. we rolled into the dealership. I needed a break, so I headed downstairs to the restroom. It had been less than 40 hours since we crossed the border, but it felt like a week. When I came out, I saw the Jacobsons' car pulling away. Darla rolled down the window just long enough to flip me off. I returned the gesture, walked into the break room, poured some coffee, and crashed on the couch. I didn't wake up until 3 p.m. When I finally woke up, there was a note from my boss, "We need to talk." I knocked on his office door. "You've been monopolizing the break room," he joked. "I got a call from Mrs. Jacobson. She wanted to know how you survived driving with her granddaughter." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" He smirked. Apparently, Darla was a nightmare the entire trip. The Jacobsons didn't even want her with them in Vancouver. Their grandson left because he couldn't handle her anymore. "Mrs. Jacobson's impressed you didn't strangle her." I smirked back. I wanted to believe me. He laughed. "Anyway, they're glad you made it back safe. Mr. Jacobson will be discharged soon and they want us to service the bus. They're even talking about buying it outright." "That's great," I said. "I thought they might sell it." "Not a chance. Now go home and get some rest. The break room needs a break from you." After just 3 days, it felt like I'd been gone for weeks. I went home, showered, shaved, and slept for nearly 30 hours straight. When I finally woke up, I realized I hadn't even thought about my phone. I searched my luggage but couldn't find it. I called my boss. "Hey, can you check the break room and the coach for my phone? I think I left it somewhere." He called back a few minutes later. "No luck." "Damn," I muttered. "How many customer calls did I miss?" I got back to the dealership and spent the morning catching up on client messages. By noon, I was heading back to my cubicle with a fresh cup of coffee when I saw Darla walk into the break room. I quickly ducked into the staff area and waited her out. About 10 minutes later, the loudspeaker paged me to my boss's office. I took my time sipping my coffee before finally making my way in. He greeted me casually. "Trey, Darla Jacobson's here. She stopped by to drop off your cell phone. Apparently, you left it in her grandparents' car." As he spoke, his desk phone rang and he stepped out to take the call. I nodded politely at Darla and motioned for us to step out into the showroom. She walked a few steps ahead of me, pulled my phone from her purse, and set it on a nearby table without handing it directly to me. She looked at me for a moment and asked, "Am I really that bad?" "Yes," I replied without hesitation. She didn't say another word. She just turned and walked out. Back at my desk, I tried to refocus, but a loud crash from outside broke my concentration. I rushed to the scene and saw 2 wrecked cars. One of the drivers was Darla. She was banged up but alert as medics worked on her. She looked up at me, half-conscious, and managed a weak smile. "You always catch me at my best," she joked before passing out. The EMTs loaded her up and took her to the hospital. I called the Jacobsons to update them and reassure them she was okay. Mr. Jacobson's response was cold. "A broken arm? Too bad it wasn't her neck." Mrs. Jacobson asked me to call Darla's parents, so I did. They were polite and thanked me for the update. Later, I finally checked my phone. 54 messages. Mostly from my mother, Judy, a few clients, and one from Michael Hamilton. I set up appointments with the clients and ignored the rest. At 5 p.m., I left work but decided to swing by the hospital before heading home. At the information desk, I found Darla's room. Her parents were already there visiting. Her mom introduced me. "Trey, this is Ralph and Joanna Jacobson." They were friendly, though her dad smirked as he said she hasn't stopped talking about that trip. I bet, I thought, remembering how exhausting she could be. After some small talk, I said my goodbyes, but Darla's father stopped me on the way out. "Thanks for calling us when she was hurt." I nodded and left, feeling a little out of place. Back home, I debated calling my mother, but I didn't. That silence lasted for weeks. Both my mom and Judy kept trying to reach me. I ignored every call. Even my stepfather reached out, but when he tried passing the phone to my mother, I cut the conversation short. Eventually, my attorney mailed me the signed divorce papers. They'd been sent to the Florida address Judy had given me. Jody's signature was big and bold, written in bright red marker. No mention of the pregnancy, if that had ever been real to begin with. In 2 months, I'd officially be free. The idea of staying single started growing on me. It also reminded me just how long it had been since I'd been with anyone. The moment I sat down, my mind wandered, so I got up, showered, and got dressed for dinner. Just as I finished getting ready, my phone rang. Hello? Hi, Trey. It's Jod Jacobson, came the warm voice on the other end. Hi, Mrs. Jacobson. How's Robert doing? Call me Dodie, she said. He's doing great. He's even planning our next trip to Colorado. I'm a little nervous about how he'll handle the mountains, though. Don't worry, Dodie. His trainer will make sure he's safe. As long as he takes it slow, he'll be fine. That's what he says. He's been reading everything about mountain driving. I chuckled. Well, I might need a drink before we go. She laughed, her warmth shining through. I always liked Robert and Dodie, they were real people. Anyway, she continued, we're having a barbecue this Friday at 6 to celebrate Robert's recovery. Bring your wife, we'd love to meet her. I froze for a moment, realizing I'd never shared my personal life with them, and clearly neither had Darla. I'm actually in the process of getting a divorce, I admitted. Dodie pulled me into her warmth even over the phone. Your wife is an idiot, she said matter-of-factly. We'd still love to have you. Thanks, Dodie. I'd love to come. That week at work turned out to be one of my best. I sold 3 vans, including a high-end bus once owned by a country music star. The commissions were excellent. On Friday, I pulled up to the Jacobson estate right at 6 p.m. The house was impressive and the garage still held the boat I'd driven over from Vancouver. A valet parked my car, it felt strange, but I went with it. Inside, about 50 guests mingled. Dodie greeted me with a big hug and asked again where my wife was. I'm divorcing her, I said simply. Dodie pulled me closer and whispered, she's an idiot. She looped her arm through mine and led me toward the crowd. When she mentioned introducing me to some nice young ladies, I knew I didn't belong. I decided to hang around just long enough to finish my brisket and beer. Then I spotted Darla. She was running from some guy across the room. I hadn't expected her to be here, but I should have. Before I could slip away, she grabbed my hand. Come on, Trey, she said, tugging me inside the house and toward the library. Yes, the library. Once inside, she closed the door behind us, looking upset. This guy's an a-hole. I have a behavior problem, Trey. I need help. I started walking toward the door without saying a word. Where you going? She called after me. I'm leaving, I replied, not slowing down. Before you kick me out? She asked, almost pleading. Because I agree with him, I said, turning back slightly. He shouldn't have said it in front of everyone, but somebody had to. Damn it, Trey. You're supposed to be on my side, she shot back, frustration burning in her voice. Why? I snapped. The only nice thing you've ever said to me was when you were lying in the street, bleeding. She slumped into a chair. I stood there for a moment, staring at the floor. How's the arm? I finally asked, trying to cut the tension. It itches like hell, she muttered. I have to use this thing to scratch it. She pulled a little tool out of her cast that looked like a tiny back scratcher. I gotta go, I said, heading for the door. Trey, she called again. Yeah? I turned slightly. If I promise to behave, will you have dinner with me? She asked softly. I paused. Darla, I'm going through a divorce. I don't need extra stress. And I'm likely to do something that'll just make it worse. So no, dinner's not a good idea. Saturday morning, I packed a small bag and got ready for a quiet weekend. That afternoon, my mother showed up at my door. I let her in. I've been thinking it over, she said quietly. And I agree with you. There are things in a marriage you can compromise on, but faithfulness isn't one of them. You reminded me of everything your father put us through. No one should live through that. I'm sorry for trying to push you back toward Jody. I was being selfish, thinking about the baby and about being a grandmother. Please forgive me. I forgave her and we hugged for a long while. We sat and talked for another hour before she left. Monday morning, my phone rang. Trey Taylor. Good morning, Trey. It's Michael Hamilton. I've got news. What's the news? I asked. Stan Morrison called, begging for his job back. And? They said no. I laughed. Good to know, Michael. Just thought you'd want to hear it, he said. We were on a first-name basis now. I hung up smiling. Around noon, the Jacobsons' coach pulled into the dealership yard. I was busy with clients, so I couldn't greet them right away. About 30 minutes later, after walking my customers out, I made my way to the bus. Darla opened the door. Hi. Come on in. I stepped inside, avoiding the driver's seat on instinct. The smell of lasagna filled the air. Darla handed me a glass of wine. Clink, she said with a small smile as she raised her glass. We both took a sip. It was good, really good. I thought I'd offer lunch instead of dinner, she explained. And figured it'd be better to talk in private, less chance of one of us embarrassing or pissing off the other. She motioned around. I asked my grandparents if I could borrow the bus for this. When I told them why, they agreed, just made me promise not to drive off if I got mad. You said when, not if, I pointed out, smirking. She smiled. He knows me well. I was waiting for her to start an argument, but she didn't. She stayed calm, refilled her glass, and said, I hope you're hungry. I made lasagna this morning. It's good if I do say so myself. She moved around the small kitchen easily, even with the cast on her arm. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Bring it in, please, she called out. I went to answer. It was my boss. I waved him off awkwardly. It's okay, I said, closing the door and returning to my seat. Darla kept moving around like she'd lived in that bus for years. She was comfortable. I smiled, knowing full well one of us would probably screw this up sooner or later. She asked me to sit at the dining table. The space was tight, but with the slide-outs extended, it felt cozy. We ate, chatted, and finished a bottle of wine without any drama. After a couple of hours, I stood up to leave. Thanks, Darla. This was a nice surprise, and the food was great. My pleasure, she said, walking me to the door. As I stepped down, she leaned in and kissed me. Soft. Unexpected. We both froze for a moment. Is dinner still off the table? She asked with a little sparkle in her eye. How about tonight? 7? She handed me her address and we kissed again, longer this time. It took me 10 more minutes to finally step off the bus. As I did, I noticed 6 faces watching us through the exhibit hall window, including my boss. The second they saw me spot them, they scattered except for my boss, who held the door open. Well, I'm off to get ready for tonight, I said, laughing. About 10 minutes later, I watched Darla drive the bus out of the lot. As we headed to her house later that evening, my phone rang. Trey Taylor. So you managed not to eliminate each other, huh? Dodie's voice came through. Hey Dodie. I think Robert's listening. We want to hear your side, Robert chimed in. I'm a gentleman. I don't kiss and tell, I laughed. Horse crap. Robert fired back. Robert. Watch your language, Dodie scolded, but she was laughing. Trey, she continued, when Darla asked to borrow the coach, she was nervous but finally confessed it was to make you lasagna. I had no idea she even knew how to cook. She made you lasagna, Robert added. That's a first. Yep, I said. She just knows. She's tough on the outside, Dodie said softly, but she's a good girl. She's been hurt a lot. That attitude? It's just armor. Don't hurt her, okay? Understood, I replied, though I thought Robert was laying it on a bit thick. I'm just saying, Robert added, treat her right. Don't worry, I assured him. Before I could hang up, my phone rang again. Trey, it's Judy. The anger surged immediately, but I kept my voice calm. What's up, Judy? I just wanted you to know, she began, her voice tight. Jody kicked Stan out. But he came back today and beat her up. She's in the hospital. ICU. Broken nose? Stan's in jail. My heart sank. What about the baby? I asked, barely holding my voice steady. She lied about it, Judy said flatly. It's gone. And honestly, Trey, I'm done with her. She's still my wife until the divorce is final. She stopped being your wife the day she signed those papers, Trey. And with that she hung up. When we reached Darla's gated community, the guard raised an eyebrow when I told him who I was there to see. You visiting Darla Jacobson? He asked, half smirking. Yeah. He chuckled as he picked up the phone to call her for clearance. Good luck, he said as the gate slowly opened. At dinner, I learned a few things about Darla I hadn't known. She liked her steak and potatoes, medium-rare ribeye with blue cheese and a loaded baked potato on the side. Watching her cut into the steak one-handed with that cast was honestly impressive. She ate half, then signaled for the waiter to box up the rest. I joked, I didn't know they had doggy bags here. The waiter grinned. First time for everything. As we pulled up to the gate again on the way back, the same guard was still on duty. This time, though, his face was more curious than amused. I glanced at Darla and joked, I don't have many dates. He's not used to me coming home in the same car I left in. Usually, I take a cab. She laughed as we parked in her driveway. When we got inside, she offered me a drink. What'll it be? She asked. Gin and tonic, I replied. We sat for a while, quietly sipping. Then she leaned in and I got the hint. We spent the night together. The next morning, I called my boss. Hey, I won't be in today. Why not? I'm still on my date from last night. He just laughed. About time. The days that followed were quiet, almost unnervingly so. It felt like the storm that had ripped through my life had finally passed. The finality of my decision settled over me like a heavy but oddly comforting weight. I was done chasing closure from people who never deserved my trust to begin with. I'd moved on. Not perfectly. Not painlessly. But decisively. Darla and I kept seeing each other. Over time, her sharp edges softened and I got to see another side of her, a sense of humor, depth, and resilience that complemented her fire. She challenged me in ways I didn't even realize I needed. For the first time in a long time, hope didn't feel like a trap, it felt possible. As for Jody, she faded from my life like the distant echo of an old storm. I still got occasional updates from Judy, but they barely registered anymore. The anger was gone, replaced with something I never expected, strangely enough, a quiet kind of gratitude for the hard lessons that led me here. Work at the dealership thrived. The Jacobsons became regulars, their zest for life a constant reminder of what a real partnership looked like. They often invited Darla and me over for dinners, offering us the kind of support only people who've been through hell themselves can give. One evening, Dodie leaned over to me after dinner and whispered, "You've been through enough, Trey. Let yourself be happy." My relationship with my mother slowly repaired itself too. There was still tension any time she brought up Jody or the past, but I'd learned to set boundaries. I chose who and what I allowed into my life now. One evening, after a long day at the lot, I pulled up to the Jacobsons' coach, parked right outside Darla's house. She had invited me over for lasagna again. When I stepped inside, the familiar smell of garlic and herbs hit me. Darla smiled and raised her glass of wine. Her cast was finally off. "To new beginnings," she said softly. I clinked my glass against hers. Each sip felt like another small weight lifting off my shoulders. I didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time in years I wasn't afraid to find out.